Hey, hello everyone. Excited to be here and excited to be talking to all of you. I'll start with a brief introduction about myself. I'm Rajeev. I work as a senior data product at a company called Meesho in India. Uh, Meesho is like an e-commerce platform and especially geared towards the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 segment in India. Before working with Meesho, I used to work with a company called Gojek. Spent around 5 years there, did a bunch of roles, and before that, I was in the consulting industry for a long time. So today, as already mentioned, I'll be talking about how to build compelling products and sharing my experience in Meesho and in Gojek as to how using various insights at the intersection of product and UX, we were able to create products which were compelling, which solve the use cases for our users and help them provide value. Right. So this is broadly the next 20-25 minutes. This is what I'm planning to do. I'll start with how understanding the very diverse demographics and deep diving into the various nuances helps uncover insights, which helps us take product decisions, right? And I'm going to share a few nuances, few examples from my recent experience and how we have been able to use those insights in product decisions, right? The second thing which I'm going to talk about is even after you understand your users very deeply, how it is very important that we also understand the various barriers which prevent our users from being successful in using the product, or it's an impediment for them to fulfill their goals using a product, right? So that's what I'll be covering up as part of breaking barriers. And then I'll also talk about how once you understood your users and how their barriers, how you can actually create compelling, tailored experiences, which ensures that the product that you're building is landing the way it should be, right? And has a higher chances of success. And finally, what I will also talk about very briefly is about this is a specific process of creating products, but how to ensure that this way of building products can be sustained in a big organization at scale, right? So that everyone is actually building products this way. So I'll briefly touch upon the various values, org design, and practices which are important to help that happen. So yeah, having said that, let me start with the first section, as I said, right? So a brief about, so I work on the seller side of things at Meesho, right? And seller side means sellers are the ones who have all the products and which they are willing to sell to the end customers, and they list these products on the platform. And so this is the target group, right? And typically the target group that we have is the, as we call the Bharat of India, right? Which is the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 segment. A lot of them are probably selling online for the first time. A lot of them actually have come online very recently, right? Experiencing internet very recently. Some of the first products that we are used is like WhatsApp, very common first introduction into digital products, and then they graduate into social products and then video streaming products, etc., etc. So their world, if you look at their digital world, that is a lot of them, that's what the digital world is, and that's how they've been introduced to the digital world. Now, when we think about building like a seller panel, seller side product for such a diverse audience, there are a lot of aspects that we have to take into consideration, right? And the team at Meesho, the user research team, the design team, the product team actually went about understanding. So what I'm going to share is basically some of the insights that we uncovered, which we use as guiding principles when we go about building products. And this could be different for different user groups, but the idea is to present some of these aspects so that you understand like what kind of qualitative insights and guiding principles helps us in creating products for these set of audiences, right? So the first thing is familiarity with their existing mental models. And this we realized very early on is that, as I was saying, there is a way that these users experience products both on the offline and the online world, right? And this is at times very different from how you and me are actually experienced products. And then we had to understand like what ticks, what doesn't tick, right? So for example, for our sellers, some of the things that's like that the UI and UX needs to be extremely intuitive, right? For example, hiding your navigation under multiple levels, it becomes very difficult for them. Icons only is not a very good way of communicating with them. You typically look at icons plus text, for example. One of the very interesting example which I would like to share is so in our password flow, when you're onboarding, you need to set the password, right? And then the copy used to say something like the password needs to have an uppercase also, right? And we saw that the drop off during this was very high. And once we started deep diving, we uncovered that the word uppercase, for example, is not a very intuitive. It's not used very commonly like you and me, right? You and me intuitively understand what uppercase means. For them, it was alien. And we said that instead of uppercase, something like capital, for example, is something that they typically use, right? And we changed the copy with that specific insight, which led to a difference in the way the conversion worked, right? So these are some of the examples which understanding the ecosystem in which the user operates and utilizing that insight to take for product decisions. Another one is around what we realized is we need to reduce the cognitive load when it comes to various decisions that the users have to take with the product, right? If using your products means that they have to take a lot of decision making by themselves, then the chances of success are very low, right? Instead, if the product is able to do a lot of heavy lifting and the users have the option and the choice to accept and move forward, that leads to better conversion and that leads to better user experience. For example, when it comes to suggesting prices for their catalog, we suggest prices and then the user is able to edit it if they want to, right? Also in terms of catalog upload, having less stringent rules. So these are some of the things that we need to do to reduce the decision making on the user side so that the adoption is better. The second thing which also we understood, and it also came across from understanding the users deeply, is how they operate when something is very new to them, right? So typically, for example, let's take an example of let's say want to start a bank account. What they will do is they will look out for someone senior in the community or in the family who has done already that. And they will ask them to accompany them to the bank, help them do all the process and use them as a help to get through that process. And typically what we call as Sathi, right? And what we figured was even when you need to ensure the adoption of a product, you also need to use the same mental model and provide them such an experience, right? Because as I said, a lot of them are new to e-commerce. So how do you ensure them that when they come into this new world, new product, they always feel that there is Meesho, there is someone who is helping me out to get through this journey, which is like very alien to me, right? So that's why we have like very bite-sized goals for them once they get onboarded, and during the activation process, we have this like small bite-sized goals which they can do, right? And then we have videos, small bite-sized videos actually done by human beings who relate to the sellers, and then like explaining. And even when they look at the video and they don't understand it, we have a human touch wherein you say that, okay, we have this webinar which is available to you. So every step of their journey, we ensure that wherever there is a chance to create anxiety, we are there. The interventions are there in the form of providing that Sathi to them, right? And the fourth aspect is ensuring that the anxiety which comes due to that unpredictable nature of the digital world is taken care of and is removed, right? Because as I said, they are new, they have a lot of anxiety, and they don't know like a certain interactions when they make on the product, how is it going to change the behavior of the product, right? If I'm going to click this button, for example, what is the next thing I'm going to see? If I've taken this action, what is the next thing which is going to happen 3 days later? So all of these are very important aspects which we need to take into account when we started building products, right? So for example, our CTAs are very, very clear. Navigate to a certain place, for example. Or when you have taken an action and landed on a successful page, you say that, okay, great. Now your money will be credited into your bank account in X number of days, right? So there is like no ambiguity in terms of what is going to happen next. What, like, there is a predictable nature that is built in, right? So in summary, these are some of the guiding principles. Again, there are more, but these are some of the guiding principles which keep in mind when we are taking product decisions, when we are taking design decisions, right? And which has helped us a lot. Second is understanding the barriers, right? Now, having understood the users and having understood what helps them succeed, you also need to understand the constraints around which they are operating, right? Because if you don't have that understanding, what will happen is, no matter what product you build, basis the insights that you have, if you're not taking care of the barriers and the constraints, then they will not be able to succeed, right? And hence, we also understood and realized that there are a bunch of barriers that the users face when they're using our products. So a few examples again there, right? One is accessibility barriers. A lot of our suppliers typically do not have a laptop or a desktop, right? So there is an incident when, so I was doing a supplier call and I was talking to the supplier. He had just onboarded to Meesho like 3 days ago. And I asked him, hey, you've been onboarded, registered 3 days ago. Why haven't you uploaded any products? And he was like, yeah, I did not have a laptop, which I had to borrow from my friend. And then I'm waiting for the technician to come and fix the broadband for me. And then I will do the product. So I'm going to do it, but just these are my constraints, right? So some of the things that you realize here is like, one, they don't have the tool which is necessary for them to do business. So they need to depend on someone. Second is they don't know things like, even if I have data on my mobile, I can actually use that. Even if I have a laptop, even without broadband, I can actually use it via hotspot, etc. So they don't know all of these kind of things. So that's when we realized that reaching the user where they are is extremely important. So for example, that's why for us, mobile and having an experience and having a great experience on mobile as well is extremely important. And we take a very platform agnostic view when we are building products. Second one is usability barriers. So here also another anecdote is when it comes to sellers, let's say on other platforms, one of the things that we have seen is these sellers are very accustomed to using Excels, for example, right? If you want to upload products, they will download an Excel, they'll do a bunch of things, make changes to prices, etc., and upload it. What we realized again was our target group is not comfortable with Excel at all. They have not used Excel. Some of them are like retailers who have just like run retail shops for the past X number of years, never used anything like Excel. So when we first introduced our catalog upload in an Excel flow, a lot of the sellers found it difficult to use Excel, to do all of that, right? That's when we realized that now we need to actually, again, understand their barrier, build something which they can do, right? And that's when we introduced a flow wherein no Excel, nothing is needed. They can actually do one product at a time, which is simple, easy enough to understand, and can be done very easily, even via mobile, for example, right? So this is another, like, understanding the usability barrier. Another thing is localization of content. Like being a diverse audience, we were always started with English, but obviously soon realized that we cannot land all our messaging, our user experience, and we have to be localized. So we started understanding how users comprehend written communication, iconography, visual communication, all of that, right? And slowly we started realizing the barriers that they face when it comes to that. For example, we started off with communication, right? What all communication we send, how can we localize that? And we saw whether there is an uptick when we actually localize content. Using English, for example, is very, very effective with certain set of audience, right? Rather than going very local to the language like a Hindi or a Malayalam or a Tamil. Another aspect is do not try to localize commonly used words, right? For example, things like order, penalty, all of these things are known to them. Don't try to even like try to localize that into the language. So all of these nuances when it comes to usability is also something that you need to understand, apply when you are taking product decisions or user experience decisions. And the third one is, again, given the audience, given the set of experiences that they have, there is an inherent trust deficit when it comes to using digital products, and especially digital products for their income, which is like they are dependent on, right? So understanding what are the various fears and anxiety that they have, ensuring that we take care of that via social proofing, ensuring that other sellers have been successful, this is what they have done. So when they know, when they understand that people within their community have been able to successful, they will also kind of build that like trust, right? Like taking care of myths that they have, right? For example, some people think that small sellers cannot be successful. So ensuring that we have built the platform in a democratic way that you can also be successful. These are some of the things that that comes as barriers when we try to interact with our user group. And this, we need to be very proactive in ensuring that this messaging is done, it's done in the right way, and it is taken care of when it comes to building products. So that is the another aspect, right? Understanding users, understanding their barriers, and understanding how to break those barriers. Now, once you have understood users, their barriers, and you have built like really great products, but you also have to ensure that when you're introducing this product or features or anything to the users, how do you ensure that you are introducing it in a tailored way, in a very specific way, in a customized way, so that it lands well? The value of what that product or feature delivers, how it is beneficial to them, all of that is landed well, and it is very clear to the users. And that is when the adoption of the product and the success is taken care of, right? So we also do it in a similar way. So what we do is like we use a concept of awareness, consideration, and conversion, and I will explain it via an example, right? So let's take an example of in Meesho. If you want to become a seller, it is a fairly, and looking at the target group that we have, it's a fairly complicated process, right? Because there are anxieties around doing online business. Second is there are needs of some regulatory needs, right? For example, bank details, having your GST, which is necessary for taxation. And then it comes to trust deficit. If I have GST, then we'll have tax implications. I've never had GST in my whole life. How is it going to be? And all of that, right? So there are a lot of questions in your seller's mind when they want to become a seller, right? So when we think about the onboarding experience, we take it like in a step-by-step way. So it starts right from building an awareness about the brand and the product itself and the value proposition itself. So when it comes to brand campaigns, the category entry points, the communications that we do, we do it at multi levels, right? You first communicate the core value of the product, and then you also communicate the sub values, things like getting orders, zero penalty, all of these things which create anxiety. You need to ensure that during your brand campaigns, during your performance marketing, etc., those are like continuously communicated and it's landed on the user's mind, right? And that creates an awareness. But once you have created the awareness, let's say 100 people get interested in your product, but once they decide to come onto the product and use it, they're also, when in our onboarding flow, we know that this is not a converted user, right? Because if 100 people are aware, 80 come to experience the product, we need to ensure that all of these 80 continuously go and get onboarded on the product. So for that, during the consideration phase, because mind you, once you have made aware, they come onto the platform, they're still in double minds. Some of them are on the fence. Is this the right thing to do? Should I do it or not? What is the cost? What are the implications? So here also, you need to ensure that you proactively understand what their anxieties are and you take care of that. So in our onboarding flow, if you look at it, once they are aware and they land on Meesho.supply.meesho.com, it's very clear. There is a hero about what the value proposition is, uh, which is related to their income, which is the most important thing for them. Then you have social proofing, how other sellers have been successful. Then you have FAQs around the anxiety points that they have. And then you have myth busting around like small sellers also can be successful. So all of the things which I was talking about in the earlier slides about understanding the users, their barriers, all of that needs to be converted into communication, which is easy for the users to understand and helps them who all are on the fence, helps them convert into taking a decision to get onboarded on the platform. And once they take the decision to get on board on the platform, here also, as I said, the process is not very simple, right? Because you have to provide your details, personal details, bank details, GST. So these are not very easy. And we need to understand how to make this process easy for our sellers, right? So if you look at our onboarding flow, again, going back to understanding the users and doing the heavy lifting on the product side, we have a very step-by-step flow of small bite-sized goals. Then we know the certain points wherein people are bound to get stuck, or there is a high level of anxiety. Things like providing bank details, or things like where you need to provide the GST details. We know that these are the steps wherein a lot of help is needed. There, going back to what I was saying, we have the Sati sort of a mentality, right? There is a very clear indication of do you have this? If not, then this is the help that you provide, and you can do this, etc., etc. Right? So during the conversion flow step, also these kind of things are taken into consideration. So this is about understanding the users, their barriers, and ensuring that you land your experiences very well, right? And this sort of a framework has helped us build like multiple features and products and improve our probability of success, right? Obviously, I mean, there are areas wherein you still continue to learn, but I think keeping these framework in mind and keeping those insights and guidelines in mind has helped us build products which scale. Now, when you think about that, when you think about this process of building products, you also need to understand that how do you convert this process into work at a scale, right? When you are a big company, the product org is big. How do you ensure that all the teams, all the product managers, all the user researchers, all the designers are following a set process and are able to adapt to some of these aspects, right? And for that, some of the things are very important. One is values. Like, what are the values which everyone kind of inculcates, right? Second is, do you have the organization structure to help implement some of these practices and be successful? And third are what are some of the practices which enforces the adherence to some of this framework, right? And I think in the interest of time, I will quickly go through that. So when you look at, for example, in my current company at Meesho, when you look at our values, there are a lot of values which resonates with what I was just mentioning, right? For example, being user first. It's one of the very, very important values. How do you understand the core of your users? How do you understand the nuances? How do you understand the insights which we are talking about? It's a very important value that everyone expected to adhere to, right? Similarly, there are other values like being problem first, depth and detail orientation. So some of this, ensuring that once your company has some of these values, these are inculcated in every individual who is working and is incorporated in the day-to-day decision making. Second is having an organization structure which supports this. So for example, we have a fully staffed, really good team of all the critical functions like user research, design, product, engineering, etc. We also ensure that the organization structure are like, we have self-contained pods which have engineers, designers, etc. Everyone working towards a single goal, which ensures that there is involvement of user research and product designers upstream in the process, so that all of these kind of nuances can be taken care of. Product managers, designers, and user research collaborate very, very closely to unearth those insights and use that into the decision-making process. And finally, some of the practices, right? And again, different organizations can have different practices, but these are some of the practices which help us inculcate some of these values which I mentioned, right? So one of the values is what we call as listen or die, for example. every employee who joins the company is expected to go through this program, wherein they will call tens of customers or suppliers or who are their main customers are, understand them, create an insight, and then present it back to the team that they're working on, right? And this ensures that that connect is built from day one itself. Then we have practices called like problem first sessions and working sessions, wherein it is it is enforced or it's ensured that the teams follow this practice of understanding their users, their barriers, and things like that. And also we have supporting documents and templates, wherein even someone who is new to the system, who is not used to the system, is able to quickly adapt to this kind of way of working, which helps us ensure that we build products in a successful way. So yeah, these are some of the things that in my experience helped us build successful products. Yeah, that's it from me. Thanks a lot.